Thank you, Bill. And thank you to John and the IISS for not just holding this dialogue, but to include the important topic of business potential between the Pacific Alliance and Asia. A topic which A, is not discussed much, certainly in Asia, and B, represents a huge and untapped sort of potential and opportunity. So, just to give you context, we operate as a private equity firm across emerging markets, or what we call the global growth markets. We feel they've emerged. We are in Pacific Alliance here in the three countries except Chile. We will go into Chile this year. We're in Sub-Saharan Africa, MENA, and Asia. Now, these markets account for some 50% of global GDP. More importantly, they account for two-thirds, or they will account for two-thirds of global growth between now and 2025. And given their growing economic importance, trade and capital flows between the emerging world, Southern Hemisphere countries, have actually exceeded, they've been growing at about 9% compound annual growth rate for several years. And today they have exceeded South-North trade flows and capital flows, and they're narrowing the gap on North-North trade and capital flows itself. They're probably 20% under. And Asia and LATAM and the Pacific Alliance countries are an integral part of the growth market story, underpinned by young demographics, growing urbanization, growing middle-income classes, and ultimately all of this leading to growing consumerism, which is where all the excitement is generated and the opportunity. Now, we've heard this morning a lot of stats about growth between trade, between Pacific Alliance, LATAM, and Asia, and it's difficult, by the way, and this says something, to even decipher data which is purely Pacific Alliance oriented as opposed to broader LATAM data. And while trade has therefore grown from, let's say, 60 billion to almost 500 billion in 2012 between Asia and LATAM, on the LATAM side, Brazil is 30% of that, and on the APAC side, China is 50% of that. FDI flows tell an even more sorry story. FDI flows from Asia, we accounted for under 10% of FDI into either Latin America or the Pacific Alliance. And of course, LATAM FDI into Asia was a paltry figure of 0.3%. So the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, I would submit, is untapped, and not enough effort from business, I should say, has been made to focus on it. Now, yes, there are some challenges and complexities which we all have to face. Geographical distances. We were all joking, those of us who came from Singapore and Indonesia, Pak Marty also, it took us about 40 hours to get here. Now that says something. But that's not just geographic distances. My geography is horrible, but we were plotting Singapore and Bogota and their proximity to the equator. And as the crow flies, it will probably be a 12, 13-hour flight. And as Cesar said this morning, it was me who told him that our country head from Peru took about 7 hours to reach here. So even within the region. Obviously, these distances lead to costs and complexities in freight and logistics. There is a concentration of trade pattern amongst certain countries, China and Japan on the Asia side, Brazil, Mexico on the LATAM side. Some degree of tensions, perhaps, due to the commodity for manufacturing patterns, commodities going into Latin America, from Latin America into Asia, manufacturing product coming vice versa. Yes, a proliferation of FTAs, bilateral FTAs, which have been hugely beneficial, but potentially, I would argue, limited depth and scope of these FTAs, and shallow geographic coverage, with a need to address the potential of noodle bowl transaction costs resulting from this proliferation of bilateral treaties and rules of origin. But to focus on the opportunities, these challenges are not unsurmountable. And the opportunities are abundant to harmonize trade, enhance cross-border FDI, and leverage on the comparative advantages between the regions. Yes, we have APAC's needs for commodities and food, and the productivity and market share and ability of the Pacific Alliance countries to export that. The Pacific Alliance countries can benefit from APAC's experience in manufacturing, energy and infrastructure, many sectors that Mitsubishi and giants like them focus on, production supply chains, public-private partnerships, and all of this not just in the context of increased export from Asia, but indeed investment and FDI footprint into Latin America and into the Pacific Alliance from Asia. I am no trade expert, but yes, it makes a lot of common sense to move from a bilateral to a multilateral trade environment. TPP is certainly probably a step in the right direction, but I don't see how it will be hugely beneficial without the inclusion of important countries on both sides, Colombia on the Latin American side and several countries excluded on the Asian side. And hence, like both Cesar Purisima and Pa Marty alluded to this morning, a huge opportunity staring us in the face, and Fardino, between ASEAN and the Pacific Alliance. These are two regional blocs already formed. Pacific Alliance, we all heard this morning, 8th largest economic bloc, 200 million people, $2.1 trillion of GDP. We in ASEAN, in December 2015, will form our AEC. We're 10 nations, we're 600 million people, 2.4 trillion in GDP. And I would purport that just these two countries, to harmonize, open up ultimately, one day, labor flows, capital market flows, is a truly, truly exciting thought. And while all the capable ministers of trade and finance sitting in this room will ultimately get us there, not sure how long it might take, but even today, ladies and gentlemen, for business, the opportunities are ripe and rampant. And I say that because the Pacific Alliance countries and the ASEAN countries are at the core of this growth in consumerism. And that consumer dynamic lends itself for businesses to merge, to geographically expand, and leverage their models in the different emerging market geographies, and to do so with tremendous synergy. I can name you a whole host of sectors which we see opportunities in every day. It can range from education, to healthcare, to FMCG, to food and beverage. We have companies over here, Peruvian restaurants that have expanded not just into Europe and America, but into Asia. We have education businesses in Asia, English language skills, tutoring skills, etc., which we are expanding into the Pacific Alliance countries. So a whole host of opportunity and low-hanging fruit for the business world to focus on. Thank you.